This is a long one, so get cozy. Up until last month, November 2013, I worked for Xerox. More specifically, I was a floor supervisor for the customer support line Xerox ran for Sprint. For those of you who don't know, Xerox Corporation runs a fuckton of customer service lines for companies who don't want to do it themselves, and don't want to outsource it. The building we worked in was old. Probably 50s or 60s, but it had been refurbished, and was like a fucking labyrinth, with walls that were able to be slid open or closed depending on how much space certain lines needed, etc. When I worked there were 5 different organizations inside. Comcast Cable, Xfinity, Sprint Wireless and Mobile, Walgreens Pharmacy Support, Home Depot Support Line, AT&T. So anyway, when I was in training in 2010, I learned there had been a fucking murder in the building before I arrived. A rep's boyfriend had gotten pissed at her, came in to meet her for lunch, and then stabbed her to death on the elevator. He was captured, of course. Well, we were in a shitty part of town anyway, so I chose not to think too much about it. This takes place a few days after I started, post-training. I was in one of the classrooms. I chose to eat lunch there when there were no training classes in session because it was a lot quieter than the break room, and I heard someone coming down the storeroom/hallway behind me. I didn't think much about it, there was a training class in the room over. So I hear the footsteps stop at the entrance to the classroom, and something jiggling the door handle. I know for a fact that it isn't locked, namely because, for security reasons, that hallway door doesn't have a lock. So I get up, go to the door, and open it. There's an audible whoosh, and a fuckton of supplies go falling off the shelves, all over the floor. I pass it off as some weird air pressure thing and finish lunch, albeit a little unnerved, so after that, things were quiet for a while. I did my job well, had my own team on the floor. Some weird shit would happen now and again, thinking I saw something out of the corner of my eye, or the microwave in the break room's door swinging open at random times, but it was never anything I thought too much about. And then I got changed to the night shift. From 11 p.m., 6 a.m., me and 10 other individuals were virtually locked inside the building, with myself having the only outside door key. It wasn't too bad, at first. It was really fucking quiet, and we only got 2, maybe 3 calls a night, so most of the time we were dicking around, attempting to troubleshoot known problems in CST, customer support tool, basically a giant database of known errors, fixes, troubleshooting methods, activation numbers, etc. One night around 2:30 a.m., a team member left to go to the bathroom. He got out the door when he scrambled back inside, slammed the security door and said that there was someone in one of the bathrooms. I looked at him, we'll call him Frank, like he was a fucking idiot, and asked him what he was talking about. Frank said that he'd opened the door, was about to head to the bathroom, when he saw the female bathroom door close. Those doors are heavy as fuck, and audibly click when they close, to avoid anyone sneaking into them. Concern rippled through the team, and the general consensus was that we should check it out before calling the police and looking like a bunch of idiots. 4 of us volunteered to go into all the rooms our security card could access, and make sure we were the only ones on the floor, at least. Anything on the second floor could eat a dick, and the morning people would meet anything on the first. We steeled ourselves, opened the door into the hall, and stepped out. Tea was pretty fucking hot in the hall, which was weird given the time of year, but we chalked it up to weird TN weather and pressed on. Frank led the way, pointing at the women's room and saying that was the door that had closed. The one female, we'll call her Lisa, in our party opened it up, and let out a loud "what the fuck?" The trash bin had been tipped over, and the day's waste dragged all around the floor. The stall doors were all closed, and upon further inspection, locked. One of the light panels had fallen, and shattered on the tile, but the bulbs were still in place, albeit flickering from time to time. It looked like a fucking twister had been through it. But there was no one in there, and the door, as far as we know, hadn't been opened since Frank came bawling back. Like the hallway, it was fucking sweltering in there. More irritated than frightened at this point at having to fill out a vandalism report to upper management, we left the room as was, and proceeded through each of the other rooms we could get into, which was all of them but the room and the Home Depot room. The only other room that appeared tampered with was the break room, which had its lights turned on. Break room lights were turned off by the evening crew at 8 p.m., to save energy. We figured someone had just forgot to turn it off, and more than likely, that's really what had happened. I finished my shift, filled out the report and left, a little unnerved and very irritated, but was too groggy to really think of anything about it. So about 6 months passed between that event and the next. Some dipshit had decided to light up on his last day here, and ended up accidentally starting a fire. It was contained, but the smoke and damage was too expensive to repair, so they just sealed it off behind one of those walls, and used the place to store old customer records and broken office equipment, including a bunch of old chairs after we replaced them. For that reason they kept an unlocked door to the place, and kept the security door from the hallway active. A quick explanation about these doors: they were unlocked via a security badge that you scan to unlock it. Every scan was registered to security and IT with your employee ID number, who it belonged to, etc., to prevent theft and other unscrupulous activity. They emit a quiet beep when the badge is accepted, and the door unlocks. When it's a door you can't go in, it emits a louder beep beep beep, and the attempted access is flagged on the tracking program in IT and security, and placed on a separate list. Get too many of those, and your employment will be terminated for constantly trying to get into places you aren't allowed in. So one night, it's me and my trusty crew. It's around March, and everyone in my team really had a thing for basketball, so we were watching a game we DVR'd on the office TV. As Comcast had a stake in the building, each floor was equipped with a TV plus a DVR. Each shift was allowed to record one thing. We chose basketball, as it made the night way less boring. As I was watching, I heard a quiet beep beep beep. I didn't think much about it, being engrossed in television. Then, from our door, beep beep beep. We all froze. It was the same team as before, for the most part, minus Lisa, who had left over Christmas and transferred to the Raleigh Center. It came again. Beep beep beep. Beep beep beep. Beep beep beep. Beep beep beep. Panicked. Now, the team entered emergency mode. They proceeded to their cubicles and pretended to be working on something, but I wasn't satisfied. I moved to the door, large, wooden, with 2 panels of glass on either side, not near large enough for a person to fit through, with that weird blurred effect that stops you from really seeing anything. It was purely decorative. All the while, this fucking beeping was still happening. At such a rate that I assumed the door was just broken. I pressed my face against the glass as hard as I could to get a look at our would-be assailant. Nothing. Not a fucking soul. The beeping continued, and then I nearly shit myself. Something darted past the glass, small and pale. It was impossible to make anything else out due to the blur effect of the glass. The beeping resumed as I screamed for someone to call security. There was definitely someone or something up here. While someone dialed the number for security, rain began to pound on the windows. Good old goddamn TN weather. The TV switched to a severe thunderstorm warning for our county, as the beep beep beeping continued from down the hall, then at our end, then at the fire end, then at our end. Suddenly, it stopped altogether, as Frank continued to wait for the one-night shift guard to answer the phone. Then, the noise I was dreading. A single, solid tone beep of the door at the end of the hall unlocking. The wall was up, at least, so whoever it was. I nearly fucking pissed myself. The unlocked door to the flamed-up end of the call floor was, as usual, unlocked. I broke into a sprint, as another employee realized the same thing I did. We braced ourselves against the door, not considering how fucked we'd be if this guy had a gun to just shoot through. The handle jiggled furiously for what seemed like minutes, but in retrospect couldn't have been more than a few seconds. It went up and down the wall, slamming against it, shaking the entire flimsy thing. I could hear chairs rolling about on the wood floors, carpet long gone in there, a machine flipped over and crashed, papers flying around. We'd gotten wise quickly, rolling our chairs against the door and hiding elsewhere in the floor, waiting for it all to be over. The night shift guard still hadn't answered. Knowing how lackluster our security force was, he was probably in his office, eating or sleeping or wanking. I don't know what the fuck he did all night down there, but it sure as shit wasn't guard anything. Thunder crashed, and the lights flickered out. Everyone let out something similar to a scream or a no shit, and tensed. The banging stopped for a moment. In the event of a power outage, none of the security doors lock, so that if the power's out because of a fire, no one roasts to death. I could hear my heart beating in my ears as I peered over towards our call floor's door, and heard it cut through the air as it opened. I clenched my eyes shut, waiting for gunshots to start going off as some deranged office shooter prowled through the darkness, praying I wasn't going to fucking die here. Instead, all I heard was moist, ragged breath as something, that's all I can describe it as, moved about the floor. None of us dare speak or move, to avoid alerting whatever it was, as it tossed papers around, threw phones off desks, and chucked a monitor. Chairs were tipped over, one cubicle had its wall completely knocked down. I heard frantic muttering near Frank's location. The man was a devout Catholic, so I'm sure it was a prayer or something. Slowly, whatever it was dragged near the desk. I'd quickly crawled under. It tripped the chair away. I nearly shoved my fist in my mouth to keep from screaming, the metallic taste of blood in my mouth as I sank my teeth into my knuckle. It remained there a few moments before the southern drawl of our security guard echoed, "Are you all okay?" There was a horrific noise from whatever the fuck it was. Ghost, monster, the goddamn boogeyman, I don't fucking know. But it screeched, and the sound of the dividing wall collapsing was audible as he let out a startled "what the fuck?" and gave chase. We all remained in the dead silent blackness for at least another 30 minutes, until the hum of sweet light returning was audible, and its visual blinding and disorientating for a few moments. We said nothing. The security guard returned and asked if we were okay. We said we were, and he returned downstairs. We cleaned up, not wanting to even remotely try and explain how any of this had happened. We'd be called crazy, and fired, especially since the power outage meant the cameras hadn't caught shit. We finished our shift without saying a word to each other, and went home. Our team was moved downstairs shortly after, thank God, and nothing happened from then on. I don't have any conclusive evidence or statement as to what happened. All I know is that the IT guy came to me the next morning asking why there were like 100 failed security checks on each door from an ID badge that had no employee ID assigned to it, and was labeled null and inactive badge, either a discharged employee or one that never had coding on it to begin with. I shrugged and joked maybe a ghost did it. I remained there until last month, when I transferred to the Raleigh branch with Lisa. On my last day there, I took a final walk around the third floor, just to see if anything would happen. Nothing did, but the entire time, I felt like I had holes being stared in me. So that's my experience. Sorry there's no big conclusion or epic showdown of some kind, but that's what it is. Needless to say, I came out of that job with some firm changes in my beliefs.